Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're coming to you live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas, and on the radio at 98.7 Walk by Faith in 1420 AM, Lubbock Christian Nation. Hope you guys had a great day. We had like always, we had a great day at the Rock, and still sniffling a little bit, so I'm gonna try to get through this show like I did last night. Kind of made it to the end before I got too bad, so we're gonna see if we can make it tonight. But other than that, I feel good, and hope you guys do too. I hope you've been taking your fish oil. Hope you've been getting on your feet, moving. Hope you've been working on your health a little bit today, as you've been working on all the rest of that stuff that you do out there in the world. So, yeah, I hope things are going well for you. So we've been breaking down this week some spinal biomechanics, and we got into the nutrition of a disc yesterday. It was really cool how that worked out, because we had the show that I was going to do last night had to do with that whole lumbar flexion, lumbar extension, that whole thing, and then I just happened to check my article review, and Dr. Murphy had downloaded an article on disc nutrition, and so it was really cool. And so that's what we're doing today. We're finishing that up. We got through some of that last night. So what I want to do is I want to finish that article, go through that article and talk about that a little bit more. And then I want to show you, for you guys that are watching on Facebook or YouTube or X, I want to show you some x-rays that you can look at and say, oh, wow, that's what he's talking about. And I think it helps us to determine, I think it helps us, the more we know about something, the better we can handle our own lives. And that's what I think is pretty cool about this. You know, everybody's got a spine, and sometimes it malfunctions. And when it does malfunction, you want to know why it's malfunctioning. But before I get to that, so that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to finish that article, and then we're going to go through some x-rays, and that'll take us through the majority of the show, I think. So before I get to that, I had a really interesting experience today, and of a new patient that has had 3 or 4 back surgeries, has 6 or 8 screws in his lumbar spine, and is under care of his medical doctor, is under care of his pain management specialist, has got lots of people taking care of him, and his daughter's a patient here, and his daughter got him to come see me, and so she was like, well, are you sure you could work on him? He's 80 years old, almost 80 years old, and he's got all this metal in his spine, and he's on a walker, and he's kind of bent forward, and he's having a tough time. And is there anything you think you could do for him? And I was like, well, absolutely. I think there's something I could do for him. And the reason I say that is because I'm a wellness doctor, not a pain management doctor. If you're going to ask me if I could stop his pain, probably not. Like, maybe, but probably not. It's pretty bad. But he really doesn't have. When he got here, he really doesn't have that much pain. It's function that he's got. I mean, he's had some tough things to deal with. But when we got him here and we went through the exam and we went through what we have in the office, and I told him about the Ultra G, and I told him about the fitness room, and I showed him how his brain worked, and I talked to him about supporting his brain, and I talked to him about activating his brain, and I walked him through the slides that we've seen on this show about, hey, listen, you know, when you were born, your eyes were down and in, and you could see 9 inches in front of your face, and all that sort of thing. And as you rolled over on your tummy and you got your eyes up and you went through this process, remember, we've gone through that over and over and over again. And when we got through with all that, he had a list of questions that he had typed out before he got here. And he said, well, you've answered some of these already. But then he asked me some really good questions. And one of the questions he asked me is, how many visits do you think it's going to take for me to get better? Or how many visits do you think it's going to take before I notice any difference? And I was like, okay, look, we need to talk about the difference between pain management and wellness. And we need to have a pretty good understanding of where we're starting from and what we're trying to accomplish with this whole thing. And we've discussed this before, but you guys that are new to the show, I wanted to go over it with you one more time just so that you understand exactly the difference. And let's just take it. Let's take this idea and let's put it on a graph. Let's just make a graph and let's just make a line and let's just say that this is our symptom line. Okay, that's what we as people tend to call a symptom. Okay, it's a very really it's a noticeable symptom that's defined mostly. A lot of times we'll notice this as some sort of pain. That's really what it's all about, is pain. So what when we evaluate someone, what we look at is we look at an accumulation of physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress. And when you add that physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress up, the distance from there to your symptom line is your ability to adapt. And every biology book will tell you that a cell's that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to adapt. The cell's trying to adapt. The human is trying to adapt. Organism is trying to adapt. Trying to adapt constantly to your environment. There's all kinds of stressors in the environment, and the body's constantly trying to adapt. And if you lose your ability to adapt, all of a sudden you'll cross over that line, and now you'll have some sort of symptom. And we'll want to go to a provider when that happens usually, or we'll want some sort of treatment. Well, we'll want some sort of anti-inflammatory. We'll want some sort of painkiller. We'll want to put some ice on it. We'll want to wrap it up with an ace bandage. Well, something like that happens. It's like it cues us to go search for a solution, right? Because we don't like being in pain. It's not comfortable. So what now you're in pain. So let's just take that model right there. Well, let's say a patient comes in and they've got a problem, whatever that problem is. We just call it problem X. In a pain management office versus a wellness office. And this is my definition. This is not a national standard definition. This is not a state of Texas definition. This is not some sort of textbook definition. This is my 24-year clinical experience definition, my doctorate level definition. This is the way that I see the whole thing. So the first 12 visits are pretty much going to have very similar goals. The first 12 visits, we're going to try to solve whatever your problem is. Your immediate pain problem. We're going to try to get you to be asymptomatic as far as you're concerned. We're going to try to get that to be done as quickly as possible. Sometimes, and that's what I told him, I said, sometimes you have that Jesus moment where you lay your hands on somebody and bam, they're healed. It's like one adjustment. It's like, that was the most awesome thing ever. I just got one adjustment and I was healed. And I call it a Jesus moment because he's the only one I ever heard of that could do it. But it does happen sometimes. You adjust somebody and they just had one subluxation and solved their problem and that was it. And they're out of pain. Most of the time it takes a few visits. But you're going to know on about 90% of the people, you're going to know something within the first 12 visits on most of the people. Now this guy's an outlier, so it's a little bit different. And I'm getting to how I answered the question, but I was telling him all this. The difference is the pain management guy. So on our graph over here, basically, however many visits that took, the pain management guy got you back down below the line. And then they think, well, I'm just going to dismiss you from care. You're now no longer, your chief complaint has been resolved. And so now what I want you to do is I want you to come back and see me whenever you have that pain again. And so you just leave, you go on with your life, you add that same stressor. It may take a week, it may take 2 weeks, it may take a month, it may take 6 months, it may take 2 years. And then all of a sudden, you're back up over the line again. You come back, you restart the whole process, you get your visits, and then you just are in that circle. And you just do that for the rest of your life till you die, or until you decide you don't want to do chiropractic anymore. You go do acupuncture, or you go do massage therapy, or you buy some salve on the internet that you saw on Fox News or something like that, and then you just live your life, and eventually you die. That's kind of how it works, right? Okay. In the wellness office, what we do at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, what I do at the Rock Health and Wellness Center is I look at this graph over here as this baseline of this graph is the person that doesn't need any care at all. That person's fine, because it's how you evaluate the person. Like if I was coaching football, I think I've used some of these examples before. If I was coaching football and I was coaching Big 12 football and I was coaching defensive tackles like I did in the 1998, 1999, I was coaching defensive tackles, and I had a kid from some school around here that wanted to play defensive tackle for me, and he was a good football player. He was a good high school football player, but he was like 5'9" and weighed 210 pounds. And he was a pretty good, stocky football player. And he wanted to come to Texas Tech, and he wanted to play defensive tackle. I could put him out there on the field, but I could analyze that situation and say that center that he's playing in front of is 6'5" and 310, and that guard that's right next to that center is 6'6" and 310, and that other guard is 6'5" and 320, and those two tackles are 6'6" and 305 or 315 or 320. It's probably not going to take very long until that 5'9", 210 guy is going to get crushed by those big old guys right there, right? So I have a responsibility to analyze that situation and say, we've got a problem before we have a symptom. Because that's how you get fired right there. Put that kid out there. It doesn't matter if he's FCA president. It doesn't matter if he's a 4.0 student. It doesn't matter if he's the best football player in the history of so whatever X high school. He's in the wrong spot. He's probably still a good kid. Maybe you want him to date your daughter or something like that. That's great. But you know better. You shouldn't do that. When you analyze someone's health and you look at their physical, chemical, and mental emotional stresses, and you can tell, dude, you're going to stay up here next to that symptom line. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to drive you down below the symptom line, but then we're going to try to address all of this physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress. And we're going to try to keep driving that down and bring that down to a level that increases your ability to adapt, right? So that's how I answered the question. I gave him this exact graph and exactly this conversation without the football analogy. I gave him this same exact conversation. And I explained to him, I said, look, this is not a pain management clinic. And what I usually find out is I get sentences about health in the people that get between 30 and 40 visits in their first year. It's usually somewhere in the middle of that 30 range. They'll come in and say something to me like, hey, Jason, am I supposed to be sleeping better? Or am I supposed to be thinking better? That's the range that I get in the first year. I get pain management sentences. My knee feels better, my hip feels better, my neck feels better, or not, whatever. I usually get that over here in the first 12 sentences. So I just want you to know that there's a difference between what we call wellness care. Wellness care is not it's not inappropriate care. It's not um, like I got a letter from my state board when COVID came out and said no wellness adjustments, only necessary adjustments. We got that. Only do necessary adjustments. And I'm like, which one of them is not necessary? What are you talking about? What exactly does that mean? Every adjustment I do is necessary. If it's addressing the subluxation, it's a necessary adjustment. So you may be symptomatic or you may not be symptomatic. It doesn't mean that you don't need to get adjusted. And you say, well, Jason, that's fortunate for you. That's really good because now you get business. Okay, I didn't invent the way it works. I just am simply telling you how it works. But let's flip it over into the medical model. You ever been to your yearly checkup and all of a sudden they took your blood pressure and your blood pressure was 150 over 105? And they said, hey, I think your blood pressure's high. We probably ought to get you on some blood pressure medication. And when you went in for your yearly checkup, you were fine. You ever had a mammogram that came back positive and it said, whoa, I feel fine, but they found a little lump. Okay, what about if you got your blood work done and your cholesterol was really high? Maybe your cholesterol was 300 and then they were like, oh, you know what? Your cholesterol is high. You probably ought to get put on a statin. And you just went right with it. You felt fine, but you got under the care of a provider because the provider had a legitimate reason why they believe that you should take that stuff, right? Same thing happens in a wellness office. It's not unnecessary care. Unnecessary care is adjusting somebody who's down here on this line with they have zero findings in any realm that you can possibly imagine. That's a person that doesn't need to get adjusted. So that's what I answered to him. I said, hey, I want you, he's 79 years old. I want you to be healthier when you're 80 years old. This time next year, I want you to be healthier than you are now. Like, I want you to be healthier at 81 and healthier at 82. And I can tell you what's going to happen if you don't. You're going to head downhill towards death. And you're going to accelerate that. And it's going to go faster because the more you aren't able to move, the less your brain is going to work. And the less your brain's going to work, the quicker this onset's going to hit you. And like, look, I've seen this happen enough times to tell you how that works. So it was awesome. The visit was awesome. We answered all of his questions. He was completely appreciative of the whole thing. He's a sharp fella too. Like, and he was completely appreciative of the thing. I took him back and showed him the Alter G, and it just happened to be that my mom was on the Alter G, getting started with her knee rehab that she's doing in our office. She was actually on the Alter G back there, and we got to show him the whole process. And then we took him over to Brooke in the gym, and she showed him some of the brain exercises that we do. And now, did I lay him down on the table and pop his back? Absolutely not. No, he's got degeneration everywhere, but he's got rods and screws and all this stuff in the middle of his back. No, when we took him into the adjustment room, we just set him down on the table. I used the activator as the adjusting mechanism from top to bottom. I used the activator where I got to his lumbar spine. He said, it's dead as heck back there. I can't feel any of that. Like, yep, that's not good. That's not good. And then we used vibration. Then we used his eye movement. And we used fingertips and all the things that we talk about on the show. That's the way we did the adjustment. We did not pop any bones at all. And so just wanted to share that. Just want to share that information with you and let you know some philosophical foundational things that happen in a wellness office. We're gonna move you through these phases of care, and we're going to try to improve your health as you're going through, and we're going to try to measure your health in different ways. We did the step test with him. He completely turned to the right. I mean, like immediately on the first step. We stood him on the pad and fell to the right. We had some weakness in the right side, so we got some contradiction right there. And the uvula was balanced. There was no problem inside of his throat. So there's some things, some clinical judgment. The grip strength was really weak on the right side, but he has had surgery on that right hand before. And he had surgery for I don't even know what that's called. It's Dufresne's contracture. I don't know if that it starts with a D. I can't even remember exactly how to pronounce that. Uh, that's not Dufresne. That's Andy Dufresne from Shawshank Redemption. It's something that starts with a D and it's contraction. It's when those ligaments in your hand get all bound up and your fingers start to catch and you get the trigger finger and all that sort of thing. And so that's a symptom right there. That's a symptom that, hey, that's the gut. That's coming from his gut right there. So we can help him. We can help him by giving him nutrition for his brain. We can help him by giving him nutrition for his gut. We can help him by decreasing his 6:3 ratio. Those are things that we can work on. Those are things that are this sub-symptomatic thing that he has no idea about that we can help him with. And I'm excited about it, and he's excited about it, and we're going to move his health forward. And so that was just something that we did today at the office. So anyway, let's get on with the show, and let's get back to that article that we were talking about last night with this nutrition. So let's flip it around like this so you guys can see the article, and I'll just go this way. So the article we were talking about last night is intervertebral disc nutrition. Now, you never thought about that probably before last night, and you're probably not thinking about it today. You're probably not thinking, oh, yeah, I've been thinking about this ever since last night. I've been thinking about this disc nutrition that you were talking about, right? Okay, well, no, that's not really probably true. You've probably been thinking about other things. And maybe before last night, you've never even heard of disc nutrition. And so let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's intervertebral disc nutrition, a review of factors influencing concentrations of nutrients and metabolites. Orthopedic Clinics of North America, 42, 2011, pages 465 to 477. This article cites 112 references. So we just remember what we were talking about last night. The disc, the disc has very little blood supply. Most of the blood supply is on the back side of the disc. And you say, okay, Jason, now you're starting to lose me. Now you're talking about all this stuff, and I don't really understand what you're talking about. And what does all that mean? Okay, let's think about it, and let's break it down. Let's break it down so that we can understand. Let's draw a vertebra, and we're looking from top down on it. And let's just draw it really simple. Like this. And the disc is sitting on top of that, vertebra right there. And so let's just draw what would be considered the annulus. And it's like rings on a tree right there. Okay, the annulus is a harder outer shell, and I always think of it as like a felt, like 2 felt pads or 3 felt pads, little thin ones, like tight, like glued together, like in a circle. But it's kind of a harder outer shell, and in the middle of the nucleus, it's called the nucleus pulposus, and it is like a fluid-filled middle. Okay, so what this article is saying is that there's not a lot of blood supply in that. Let's just draw it like this, and let's say that these are like cells, like all the way around, and these are cells, and then there's cells on the inside. And so there's all the way around there's a cell. And then that middle part is fluid. Okay. What the article is saying, and what I was saying last night, is that this structure doesn't have a lot of blood supply. Now, what I'm saying is, you cut your face. You saw President Trump get shot in the ear, right? You cut your ear, you'll bleed like a stuck hog, like all over the place, right? Like you cut anywhere like that on your face, you're going to get lots of blood that's going to come out. You cut your finger, poke your finger, you're going to get blood that comes out of your finger because you've got blood there. If you were to poke the middle of that disc, you wouldn't get hardly any blood. You wouldn't get any blood at all because there's not any blood supply to that disc. So the only place that there really is coming off of your aorta, which is the big blood vessel that's coming down the front of you. You can put your hand like right underneath your sternum and just press in just gently, and you can feel your heartbeat. You can feel it on that aorta. That's a big old giant blood vessel that's coming right there. Whoa, we're going to a break. Hang on with us. Stick with us. We'll be right back right after these messages. Okay, you can feel that. You can feel that pressure right there. You can feel that heart rate. So don't push in there very hard. But that's the aorta. Well, that's coming down the front. So the back. What we're looking at back here is this is the spinal cord. The spinal cord that's going right there, and then you're getting the nerves off of the spinal cord that's coming to the body. But you're getting branches off of those nerves that are innervating the outside of that disc. The outer 1/3. The outer 1/3 has nerve supply. Okay? Well, if we're going to have nerve supply, then we've also got to have blood supply because nerves have to have blood. They can't function without it. So you got to have. So what we get is we get blood vessels that come off, and now they work around the outside of the disc to the outside 1/3, and then they supply the outside 1/3 of the disc. That's why you can get pain from the disc if you get irritation on the outside 1/3 of the disc. That's why when the disc bulges, and that you get that bulging disc situation where you get a tear in the annulus, or you get a little pinhole. It's so cool because I saw Dr. Huberman talking to our man Stu McGill. Dr. Huberman's going to come around because he's fixing to talk at NeuroCon at Parker College next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. And so he's getting an education right now in chiropractic, which is really good because he doesn't understand chiropractic, or at least he hadn't in the past. So this is pretty awesome. But I saw him with Stu McGill doing a conversation with him. And Stu McGill's the one that's taught me all this stuff about the disc and stuff. But if you get a little tear or a pinhole, that nucleus will start to accumulate over here. Sometimes it works its way through like a snake. But when that happens, now the annulus starts bulging around it. And when it bulges around it, it hits the nerve. Now you got pain running down your leg or whatever. That's the disc bulge. It's not what we're talking about tonight, though. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, and we are breaking down the disc nutrition. So, what the article is saying is that the disc is mostly avascular, meaning if there's an A in front of it, it means without blood vessels. That's what that means. So the middle of all this, how are we going to get nutrition through the middle of all that? Well, what happens is, let's look at the vertebra. Let me draw it with black. So now we've got two vertebrae, and then we've got the disc in the middle. Well, and then we've got the aorta running on the front right here. Well, what the article is saying to us is that where the branches, there's branches off this aorta that work their way through the middle of the bone itself and then loop their way back around. And they loop their way back around to the end plate. And then it's going to bring itself back around. And so it's going to go both directions. So you're going to get that, and now all of a sudden you're going to get these loops of blood vessels that are going to come down, and that exchange is going to bring the glucose and the oxygen. It's going to bring the glucose and the oxygen to the end plate of the disc. It's going to say, okay, we're going to drop it off. We're going to just swing by and drop off the glucose and the oxygen. And now you got to do something with it yourself, because we ain't going down in the deep. We're not going to penetrate. What it's saying is we're not going to penetrate down deep into the middle of the disc and supply this middle. All we're going to do is that's not going to happen right there. And all we're going to do is we're going to drop the nutrients off at the end plate right here. That's all. So that's what our article is saying to us, is that we're going to drop that off right there. And now you got to do something with it yourself. Although the disc has only a small number of cells, these cells play a vital role, right? So all that sort of thing. Nutrients, principally glucose and oxygen, necessary for the survival and activity of the disc cells are transported from blood vessels to their margins to the cells deep within the disc matrix. So the blood vessels is going to go to the margin and then to the cells deep within the matrix mainly by diffusion. So if we just set them down on the end plate, they just kind of drop their way down to the middle. But I'll tell you, it's imbibition. Look it up. Imbibition pushes it down into the middle. Movement of the joint keeps the joint healthy. That's why I hear people say sometimes that you could get adjusted too much. Like, you're just going to create hypermobility in that joint. I hear physical therapists say that for 20 years. You're just going to create hypermobility in that joint. Look, joints that move never wear out. Joints that move properly, that have the proper chemistry, they never wear out, ever, in a lifetime. You die with healthy joints when you're 115 years old. But no one gets to 115 years old because we're increasing the onset of chronic disease all the time. So, but 70 years old, you die of 70, we're supposed to live 120 years, and you're dying at 70, and you're dying, you got some joints that are completely healthy at 70, 80, 90. And then you got some joints that aren't. And the ones that aren't are the ones that weren't moving or got the wrong chemistry. So what I'm saying there is blood vessels arising in the vertebral bodies feed most of the disc. The blood supply through the vertebral bodies is critical for disc health. Lumbar vertebral bodies are supplied by arteries arising from the abdominal aorta. That's the picture I just drew. These arteries branch into the complex system of smaller vessels that give rise to capillaries responsible for supplying nutrients. The capillaries penetrate the marrow spaces of the subchondral plate of the vertebral body and terminate in loops at the interface between the vertebral body and the cartilaginous end plate. That's exactly what I was just illustrating for you, is that sentence. The capillaries penetrate the marrow spaces of the subchondral plate of the vertebral body and terminate in loops in the interface between the vertebral body and right here, right there. That they penetrate the vertebral body, they loop down, and then they drop off the nutrients, and then the nutrients through diffusion works its way down to the middle to keep that healthy, right? That's what we're trying to illustrate right there. That's going on in that disc. That's what I'm trying to show you. That it's not so much the blood supply. The outer third of the disc is fine because it's got some blood supply, but the middle part of the disc and the deep part of the disc has to get movement in order for it to stay healthy. So, movement of small solutes, such as glucose and oxygen, through cartilage matrices is predominantly by diffusion and imbibition. Movement. Movement is pushed. I guess it's still diffusion. It's not being carried. It's being pushed. So I don't really know I don't know what the definition of diffusion really technically means. If I blow a candle out, if I got a candle burning right here and I blow a candle out and the smoke from the candle diffuses across the room, you're going to smell the smoke from the candle, right? Okay, well, if I blow the candle out and then I blow the smoke across the room, is that still, that may technically still be diffusion, but it's diffusion with force. I don't know if that's still diffusion or not. You science teachers can teach me on that one, whether or not it is or not, but the force was me blowing on that candle and blowing it across the room, and you're like, oh man, it smells like smoke. Yeah, it was from the candle, right? Same thing happens with the nutrients that's going through there. The disc has to rely on nutrients supplied by small capillaries to penetrate that. Because all nutrients supplied by the capillaries of the end plate route must pass through the cartilaginous end plate, transport properties of the end plate regulate movement of solutes into and out of the disc. Calcification of the end plate severely restricts the transport of even small solids through the cartilaginous end plate. Let me tell you what that means. Let me say it again. For you guys that are listening to it on the radio, let me say it again. Calcification of the end plate severely restricts the transport of even small solids, which is glucose and oxygen, through the cartilaginous end plate. If the end plate was to calcify, that would cause a problem for us. That would cause a problem because what that is saying is this right here. If this bone, because this is bone down here, if this bone becomes very calcified and then this bone becomes very calcified, the top of that and the bottom of that, and you know what you'll get? You'll get these little bone spurs that start coming around and they start trying to weld that thing shut so that it can't move. This end plate, if it gets really thick with bone, it disrupts the diffusion process of the nutrients into the disc. So what happens? You not only get bone spurring, you also, and you not only get end plate disruption, but you now start to get degeneration of the disc. And the disc gets really thin and the bones start growing together, and they usually grow kind of choppy looking. And then all of a sudden, there's not much disc space that's left between those vertebrae. That's the combination of what's happening if the bone starts to grow. And let me show you. You're like, okay, well, I like the picture. I love these pictures, Jason. Thanks for drawing these. Yeah, you're welcome. But let me show you what it looks like on x-ray. Look at this right here. Look at this right here. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a lateral lumbar x-ray. And you guys on the radio, you really should go to Walk by Faith tonight or come to the Rock Health and Wellness Center and check this out. And or go on your phone to the Rock Health and Wellness Center Facebook page right now and watch the show. So, but right now, what I'm talking about is This exact thing, what I just drew for you on the illustration, to the best of my ability, because I'm not that good of an artist, is what I'm saying right here. This end plate, a normal disc height should be big like this. A normal disc height. There's lots of space in between those two vertebrae right there. But what happens is, and what I want you to notice about this particular x-ray is I want you to notice how white that bone is as compared to being gray. Notice how white it is. How white it is right there. How white that is. See how white that spot is right there on that. Like, you can start to see the whiteness right here. You can see the whiteness going across right there. It's becoming more white because there's more bone. And it's becoming more white and there's growing more bone because of Wolff's law that says bone grows in the direction of force. And so abnormal force, which I call biomechanics, life movement, biomechanics is life movement. Abnormal life movements, putting pressure on the disc and changing the bone density and decreasing the ability to get nutrients to the disc, and the lack of movement of this joint is causing a lack of imbibition. So I'm not blowing the smoke across into the disc. The diffusion is decreasing and the cells of the disc are deteriorating. They're deteriorating and now there's no space there. And look at what happens on the front. What happens on the front is you get the bone spur that goes along with it, because that's the anterior longitudinal ligament. And the study done back in the 70s with rabbits, and I've talked about this study before. It's a disgusting study, but it's a true study. They took rabbits and broke their legs, and it's cruel as heck, I know. But they took rabbits and they broke their legs, and they took 3 sets of rabbits. They broke their legs, and then they sent one of them just over there to the side to be the control group. And then they took the second set of rabbits and they casted the break. I'm talking about like right in the middle of the leg. It was cruel as heck, right? And then they casted the break, and then they took the third set of rabbits and they put them in an air cast that moved that break over and over. Imagine that. Imagine you break your arm, and we're going to put a cast on you, a mechanical cast, a mechanical device on your arm that's going to move that break up and down and up and down and up and down. Guess what happened? Innate intelligence. What? Innate intelligence. The spirit of God inside our body that knows how to function about stuff. It's like, holy cow. Okay, you broke the bone in half. That's not supposed to happen. Let's cast it and let's lock it down. And when you locked it down, what did you get? The body laid down calcium around it. And it grew new bone, and there was a bolus and all that stuff, that process of growing new bone, and it grew new bone. And so it laid down bone on top of that break, and it healed the break. But guess what happened to the rabbits where they put in that little device that it was moving up and down? They laid down cartilage. Innate intelligence put cartilage right smack dab in the middle of a leg bone that had never been there before in the history of that rabbit. That it's like, whoa, how did it do that? It did that because the brain said, if you're going to treat that section like a joint, I should lay down cartilage into that joint. But if you're going to treat that section like a solid bone, I should lay down solid bone and make that one bone. Now, that's why in 1970, when a high school kid blew his knee out, they put him in a cast from his ankle to his hip all the way through. And what they found out is all those guys now when they got to be old, they had all kinds of bone spurring and calcium and all kinds of stuff in that knee joint. Just completely ruined that knee joint because they locked it down for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long, right? But nowadays, when a kid blows his knee out in a game, and has surgery. The night of surgery, they got him in a cast in the hospital that's bending that knee. Why? Because they know the study. They know the results from the study that says, hey, if a joint's supposed to be moving, you got to move it. Because if you don't move it, the body's going to lay down calcium to make it a solid piece. And that's what goes on with our spine. That's what goes on with these people. These are the people that say, I don't need a chiropractor. These are the people that I'm talking about that are asymptomatic for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They're the ones that, it's like, oh, yeah, I never needed a chiropractor. Like, really? How do you know that? Because 99.44%, according to Dr. McGilchrist, of your nervous system function is subconscious. You're going to evaluate 99.44% of your nervous system based on the fact that you can't feel it at all? That doesn't even make any sense, right? Like that won't hold up. Yeah, we got to get movement in the spine. And when we have abnormal forces, then we get these things. And one of the things I wanted to show you, and I don't know if you guys can see it very well on Facebook, but I wanted to show you right here in the front is, let me see where my spine went. There, right here. This little section, you can see this little white piece right there, and you can see this little white piece right there. Those two white pieces are bone inside the aorta. Uh-oh, that's not good. That's calcification of the aorta. And it's very common. It's very common when you accelerate chronic disease. Go ahead. Eat some more sugar. Have some more corn chips. Go ahead. Life's too short. Exactly. Life's too short because we're accelerating chronic disease. But think about this for a second. If I'm calcifying that aorta, could it be possible that I might be interrupting in some form or fashion the blood supply that's coming to that disc? Could those two things be happening at the same time? And I'll present for consideration that they are. I'll present for consideration that if you're calcifying that aorta, you're also increasing the chances of decreasing the blood supply to the disc. So you're calcifying your aorta, which is not good, but you can live for a while with it. You just got to watch it, make sure it doesn't blow up on you. But at the same time, you're also getting degenerative disc disease that's happening because you're not getting proper blood supply to the disc. Right? Okay. Let's continue. It's pretty good so far, I think. Okay. Let's get on down here. In humans, load-induced variations may allow the disc to lose and regain more than 20% of its height during the nighttime cycle. Nutrients are supplied to the disc from capillaries, which are fed by blood flowing through the arteries to the vertebral bodies. We got all that, right? We got all that. Atherosclerosis of the lumbar arteries, restricting blood flow to the lumbar spine, has also been associated with degenerative disc disease. And I didn't even read that right there, and I said it beforehand, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about. Atherosclerosis of the lumbar arteries, restricting blood flow to the lumbar spine, has also been associated with disc degeneration and back pain. Well, if we're not getting blood flow around there to the nerves, we got basically neuropathy in our feet, in our back. Our atherosclerosis is basically cardiovascular disease, right? It's like hardening of the arteries. It's messing with the blood supply to the lumbar spine. It's messing with the blood supply to the disc. It's messing with the blood supply to the nerves on the outside of the disc. So that's not good right there. Chronic back pain is significantly more common in those with occluded or narrow lumbar arteries. Calcification and stenotic changes seen in the abdominal aorta are associated with disc degeneration. I promise you I did not read that beforehand. I'm just going through this article just like you are. I'm just explaining it to you right there, and then they're confirming it. Disc degeneration is evident in many people in the first and second decade of life, well before atherosclerosis develops. Disorders that affect the microcirculation restrict capillary flow and increase disc degeneration. Disorders like inflammation in your blood, like inflammation. Inflammation, I think we're going to talk about it whether we got time or not. Inflammation is, let's take that blood vessel and let's really look at it like what it is. And let's take that blood vessel and we'll say, well, that blood vessel is a set of cells that are connected together. And that makes a tube. And this may not be like histologically proper, but it's for teaching purposes, it is. So that's the blood vessel, and blood is flowing through the middle of that right there. Okay, the smaller you get to that point where you drop off oxygen, you get into what's called a capillary. And so that gets very thin and very small. It's one cell thick, really, because now the oxygen, the red blood cell that's carrying that through there has to come down to that where it narrows, and it has to come down there and drop off the oxygen into the tissue. Oh, hang on. And I lost my sharing. Hang on. What did I do? We'll just do it that way and take me out of it for a second. So now, when that blood vessel gets really small, remember what happens to blood vessels when you have an increased amount of glucose. If you increase your glucose, your blood sugar, what happens is by diffusion, the glucose diffuses into the cell, not by insulin, by diffusion. What follows? Water. What happens to the cell? It gets big and fat, like a water balloon. And the other cell gets big and fat, like a water balloon. And now, how are we going to get blood through that swollen up blood vessel? That's one of the things that the article is saying to us right there. We can't get blood through that swollen up blood vessel. So now we got a problem. We got a problem because disorders that affect the microcirculation restrict capillary flow and increase disc degeneration. Disorders like high blood glucose. Disorders like a Snickers bar. Disorders like alcohol. Like alcohol, it causes inflammation. Like increased amounts of sugar. Drink your Dr. Pepper, have your pizza, go ahead and do all that stuff and increase your inflammation. And then what happens? You increase your degenerative disc disease. And then what happens? You increase your pain all over your body. You increase your pain. And then you're like, fix me, doc. Yeah. And I'll say, take your fish oil because I need you to decrease your inflammation because we got to be able to knock some of this inflammation down so you can get better blood supply to that area. Yeah. That's really what like the whole thing is about right there. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We're out of time again tonight. We've run through the whole thing again, and I don't think we got through a couple of lines on that article. So we're going to bring it back tomorrow night. We're going to finish this article at some point this week. We'll bring it back tomorrow night. I hope this has been helpful to you. I hope it's helping you understand how you can make your life better by making sure that you're moving, like keeping your body moving. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, you guys have a great night, and we will see you guys tomorrow night at 6. Appreciate you.